and others among us will continue to facilitate. Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Yeah, Elizabeth Miller from the New York Times. As you know, Donald Trump has said that he wants to own or take over Greenland because, quote, that's what I feel is psychologically needed for success. I mean, right now, you're a part of a delegation that is engaging in traditional diplomacy, reassuring an ally. You are doing what has traditionally been done for years and years in a crisis like this. But given that Donald Trump seems to have a psychological need for Greenland, which he says, how can you counter that with traditional methods, especially when so far publicly there have been minimal Republicans opposing this?
Well, Elizabeth, thank you for the question. I can't speak to President Trump's psychological needs. That's really not my goal here. Your question, though, is repeating something he has said. I'll say this. One of the things that's been made clear to us is that the people of Denmark are very anxious, are quite concerned, and the people of Greenland even more so, and that this current tone and tempo of statements about acquisition is not constructive. I think I speak for every senator and House member here in that we deeply value NATO, and that this 80-year-old alliance, this partnership, has been absolutely critical to the United States' security and prosperity and success. I was at the NATO summit, as was Senator Shaheen, Senator Tillis, and others. This was a remarkably successful NATO summit last year at The Hague. NATO has dramatically stepped forward. Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, is now spending 3.2% of its GDP on security. NATO, in some ways, should be celebrated and embraced as being stronger than ever. Greenland is a part of Denmark. Denmark is our NATO ally. That should be the end of this discussion, in my view, because I think to do or say anything that puts at risk our trustworthiness as an ally is fundamentally strategically dangerous for the United States. So in recent conversations with ambassadors from other countries, from the Indo-Pacific, from throughout the world, if we do or say things as a nation, and I'm speaking as a senator, if I do or say something that causes a close and trusted NATO ally, there is almost no better ally to the United States than Denmark. If we do things that cause Danes to question whether we can be counted on as a NATO ally, why would any other country seek to be our ally or believe in our representations? In terms of my psychological needs, knowing that the United States is a respected and trusted ally and partner around the world is a core part of what, speaking for myself, I'm trying to accomplish. And, you know, I'll let others in the delegation disagree if you do, but I think a lot of our security as a nation has rested on our being trustworthy. We're the Article I branch. We are having active conversations amongst ourselves about what is the wisest course of action. If nothing else, I think de-escalating the level, tone, and frequency of rhetoric around this and injecting some reality about what are the actual circumstances of the security threats. There are no current security threats to Greenland. How can we best navigate Arctic security together with NATO? And how can we best navigate access to newly emergent resources around the world together? Those are conversations that we intend to continue when we get back to Washington. So,
but I will speak as the sole Republican that's standing here at this moment, because you have suggested that this is a partisan issue. Support for our friends and allies, whether they be the Kingdom of Denmark or others, should not be a partisan issue. And I think it's going to be important for us as members, not as Democrats or as Republicans, but for us as members of Congress who have been here at this moment in time, to return to Washington to speak to all of our colleagues and those in the administration about what we have heard, what we have shared, so that there is, again, greater understanding We cannot allow this to become a partisan matter. We just simply cannot. And I think the way that we keep it from being partisan is by full education, dismissing some of the assumptions that some may have, and then acting together. So you're not seeing a lot of Republicans here today. And I'm not going to give you the details of other members' schedules, but Senator Coons, quite honestly, you put this trip together pretty quickly.
Very quickly.
This is a period where the House members all have to go back to work this next week. And so we doubled the size of the Codel literally overnight. And I don't think that the absence of Republicans is because they don't care about this issue or they have already decided what side of the fence that they may be. So I would not take that as an indicator of support or lack of support. But we do have our work to do when it comes to education.
Thank you. Steny, you wanted to make a brief comment?
I want to remind everybody, Senator McConnell, who is not here, put out a very strong statement. Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune have both implied that this is not an issue they believe is going forward in terms of the President's observation. I think that's important. They're not here, right, but they are the leaders, the former leader of the Republican Party and the two present leaders have made that clear.
And Congressman Hoyer is the co-chair of the Danish caucus in the House, and his co-chair very seriously explored coming with us, as did several others. As Senator Murkowski put it, this was put together on very short order. So,
How much support do you have among Republicans in the House and Senate?
this is not a nose-counting exercise.
Okay.
This is a trip to come back with ground truth based on a respectful and constructive visit with Danish leaders. Please, if we could, Andrew.
Senator, first off, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the press conference. Senator Murkowski was just talking a lot about sharing the experiences of Greenlanders, an issue she's worked on a lot in the past, and you all have learned a lot more about on this trip here. As you know, President Trump has talked to top Democrats over the last week. For example, he reached out to Senator Warren. He reached out to Senator Schumer, who met with him at the White House. Seems like President Trump is more interested, or in the mood at least, to talk with Democrats these days. Do you see an opening potentially when you go back to Washington to maybe reach out to the White House, maybe reach out to the president and share these experiences with him, given everything you learned and just the importance of what you're talking about in maintaining the structure of the NATO alliance?
I'd certainly welcome the opportunity to talk. We haven't spoken since the inauguration. Secretary Rubio is someone who I served with for 15 years, as did a number of my colleagues. And I think we might also reach out to Secretary Rubio, since those of us who were on the Foreign Relations Committee, that's more directly our point of contact. But frankly, constructive conversation with the Trump administration, in my view, is welcome because there's a lot of facts on the ground here that are worth exploring and better understanding. Please. And if you'd tell me your name and your outlet, please.
Miriam Sessler from the national Danish outlet TV2.
Thank you, TV2.
I'm going to stay on the subject a little bit with my what my American colleagues also said. One thing is that you have a renewed passion and that you're going to go back with new knowledge and you're going to share it. But is there going to be a bipartisan resolution in Congress? What is going to be concrete out of this trip? Because I think a lot of people in the Kingdom of Denmark, all over, are very interested in knowing what is going to be the output of this trip. And in the same matter, Senator Murkowski, can you confirm that Danish officials told lawmakers this week they worried an overly partisan vote could undercut or jeopardize their position?
I worry that going to a specific legislative vehicle right now today is premature, and that frankly, to the point just made by Andrew, having conversations between our two branches, between those who are here and at many other briefings, the The Danish foreign minister was we met with him in the capital 48 hours ago, I think. There's been a great deal of very positive diplomacy between Danish representatives and Americans over the last couple of days, figuring out exactly what the right vehicle is. I think we should focus more on what is successful at de-escalating rhetoric and restoring a sense of trust between allies, rather than saying, I've got a resolution, oh, I've got a bill, no, I'm interested in moving this piece of legislation. What matters here in this moment is the outcome, and I don't think there's any disagreement about a desired outcome of a restored sense of trust and mutual respect between allies, but I'll let Senator Murkowski speak to your question.
Elaborate on that?
Of course.
It doesn't seem like that's the same opinion or the same outcome that the president and his press secretary, for example, have from the meetings that has been between Danes.
In my view, the most positive path forward would be a month from now. If I were to come back with a delegation, there'd be almost no one here, because it had stopped being a matter of alarm and understandable concern. So whatever accomplishes that objective, in my view, is the path we ought to take. Senator?
We recognize that there have been multiple approaches to what resolutions could be adopted, what legislation could be worked on. Senator Shaheen has drafted a bill that I'm a co-sponsor on that reinforces again the role of NATO and the fact that Congress has a role here. I have teamed up with Senator Gallego with regards to a joint resolution, a sense of the Senate in terms of the shared partnership. We did a resolution, Peter, that was you and I earlier last year, just reinforcing, again, the U.S.-Danish relationship. I think those are constructive, good signals of, hey, we like you, we respect the relationship, and we want to build on that. We want to underscore that. Now, taking something to a vote is different than introducing something, right? Taking something to a vote is different than perhaps a hearing before the Foreign Relations Committee where we get more information out on the table more publicly. Those types of things, again, that advance a positive, constructive dialogue, I think are good. One of the concerns and one of the fears, if you will, and it goes back to the comment that I made earlier about not wanting to make an issue partisan. Sometimes when you actually look at the vote count, it's like, whoa, the Republicans have completely gone this way and the Democrats have gone this way, and so therefore it must be a partisan divide. I don't think, again, we want to encourage any message that makes it appear that support for the Kingdom of Denmark as our trusted and friend and ally for decades and decades should be a partisan issue.
Can I say one thing real quick? I just want to also say on the House side, you know, I've talked to several Republicans. They knew that I was coming here, and they tried to adjust on the House side, adjust their schedule so that they could come. There is a desire to make sure that whatever we do on various bills that are being looked at, that is done in a bipartisan way. So the dialogue and conversation that we're having, because of the importance of the relationship with our NATO allies and Denmark and Greenland, that's not seen publicly all the time, but the conversation is happening. It is a very real conversation because of the significance and the importance, I think, on both the House and the Senate side, and we're working collectively in that way.
But just to elaborate on that, the president is also known to be a hard negotiator when he wants his way in different bills and different vote counts and so on.
We'll let that play out in the weeks ahead.
But my question is, even though that you have these conversations, which is nice to hear, there could be a concern also that the president might have a better suggestion.
It's hard to predict exactly what our president will do, and sometimes he does have better suggestions. I have a number of hands. I'm going to keep moving. Anders, if I could.
Hello, my name is Anders. I come from Politiken, a daily newspaper. From your perspective, is there anything Denmark and Greenland can do to reduce the tensions currently having?
First, thank you. It's very helpful for Americans to understand the actual facts and the actual circumstances. Very few Americans have been to the North Slope of Alaska and really understand what that environment is like. Bluntly, most Americans don't understand the dynamics within the Faroe Islands, Greenland, Denmark, what makes up the Kingdom of Denmark, and just understanding that. Part of our role is to go back. You know, we are laying a wreath after this. Part of our job is to go back and to make sure that more Americans understand just how valuable this partnership is. But if I could quote Soren Kierkegaard, and forgive me, faith sees best in the dark. This is a moment where our very positive relationships have dimmed a bit, and I hope that the people of the Kingdom of Denmark do not abandon their faith in the American people, in our fundamental goodness, in our respect for Denmark and for NATO and for all we've done together. The Americans who were deployed and served in Iraq and Afghanistan know better than anyone that Danes served alongside them in some of the hardest missions and in some of the most difficult places and did it honorably and well. And so you've already done the hard work. We simply need to remind our nation of that so that our ongoing conversations domestically within the United States, in members of Congress, and between the branches of our government are better informed by the facts. Thank you. Please.
Yesterday, President Trump suggested that tariffs would be the solution to the United States taking possession of Greenland. Is that realistic? And if he were to take steps in that direction, do you think that Congress would find a way to stand in the way of using tariffs as a cudgel in these negotiations?
Well, one of the lovely things, as you well know, is that our government has 3 branches, and I suspect the Supreme Court will be speaking to that point soon. Look, I think that the Constitution gives to Congress more of the power that is currently being exercised in tariffs, and in a way that is perhaps novel in modern history. And I think since this is an issue directly before the court, we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say as to whether the use of tariffs as a tool against close and trusted allies to try and achieve a strategic objective is really the wisest and most available. Sir.
Senator Coons, Ian Sherwood from MS Now. Could I just ask, how much do you think the actions by Denmark and other European allies to move resources to Greenland will address the concerns of the President that he's expressed? Secondly, I also believe that NATO is also working on a plan to further enforce resources in the region to address the concerns of the President. And how much do you believe that these comments by the President damage the relationship with Europe and embolden America's adversaries?
So first, I think the most pressing and current security threat in this entire region is the ongoing war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine. And it bears repeating, and I will repeat back home, that the Kingdom of Denmark has been one of the strongest supporters of Ukraine, has dedicated billions of dollars, has transferred critical advanced assets, has dedicated billions of dollars to the support of Ukraine. And so to those Americans who misperceive the balance of who has put more into this urgent fight, Danes deserve great recognition for the significance and strength of their support for Ukraine. That our NATO allies choose to engage in an exercise that demonstrates a willingness to invest more in Arctic security, I think should be welcome and celebrated. I think it's important for us to realize that the High North is becoming more and more an area of concern for the longer term. NATO, because of Putin's strategic, I think, profound misstep, has doubled the length of its border with Russia, and the High North for Finland and Sweden, which is now, you know, an expanded part of NATO, is of renewed concern. So seeing active training and deployments into one of the harshest, most remote places on Earth, I think we should take as an encouraging signal. And part of the goal that animated, I think, all of us to change our plans on fairly short notice and come to Denmark was to reassure allies and partners and to rebuild some of that. We recognize those are relationships that are under some real strain at the moment. But after a very successful NATO summit, after a number of important steps in Congress to reinforce support for Ukraine, I think we should see this as positive movement by our NATO partners, that in so many ways they are stepping up and increasing their defense, their training, their investment in our shared security. Thank you all very much. It's been wonderful being with you, and thank you to this great delegation. Thank you.